Hello, today we're starting an interesting webinar series on pediatric and orphan device development, and specifically today's session is about the planning of such devices. We're doing this webinar series together with 3 EU for Health co-funded projects, the I4 Kids for Rare project, the Orphan Dev for Kids project, and the DeCODe project. And from each one of these projects, we have a speaker today that will take you through the different phases of planning for pediatric and orphan device development. It's going to be a 3-turn series of different aspects of orphan and pediatric device development. The first part will be on the planning and the setting the stage for orphan and pediatric device development. Then next week we'll have the next webinar specifically on regulatory planning, and then right after the summer we'll have the one on clinical development. Having said that, it's my great pleasure to introduce the first speaker of today, Sofia. And Sofia will introduce the planning aspect of orphan and pediatric device development, specifically using the GAITS framework. So having said that, thank you all for being here today, and my big pleasure to introduce Sofia.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Anneliene. Hope everybody can hear me. I'm going to share some slides because as Anneliene said, I'm going to introduce you the GAITS methodology that is very, very useful for healthcare innovation, specifically for orphan devices. So please let me share my screen. So, well, before I begin, I would like to tell you a little bit about myself. I am an innovation manager at HSD Barcelona Children's Hospital, which is a maternal and children's hospital with a particular focus on rare diseases. As part of the innovation team, we provide a variety of support to our professionals, and key aspects of our work involves helping researchers and clinicians transform ideas into tangible solutions for patients. However, I am also an entrepreneur. I have co-founded a company, and I have experienced the process of creating from scratch in healthcare sector. And I'm therefore familiar with the challenges of navigating the complexities of clinical evidence, regulation, market, and technology at the same time. For me, the GAITS methodology is more than just a framework. It has become part of my thought process as an innovator. And when I look at the project, I instinctively map it across the 4 domains and ask where it sits in the different 10 stages. It has become part of my mindset when I work in healthcare innovation. So we don't have a lot of time, no, but I hope we can cover some of the main topics here today. These are the main questions. I would like you to give some insights at least, no? When we refer to healthcare innovation methodologies, and specifically in the field of orphan devices. So as you know, we're going to explain the GAITS, no? But first, here's some background about the CIMIT, no? Which the CIMIT stands for the Center for Integration of Medicine and Innovation Technology, and it's a non-profit accelerator based in Boston. It was founded in 1998. And they have, since the creation, they have supported over 1,200 innovator teams and evaluated more than 5,000 ideas. What CIMIT says is that they just don't provide advice, no? They really work alongside with the teams and they provide real support. And we really know that we have seen that GAITS is the distillation of 20 years of experience into a very structured framework. No? So at the end, innovation, it's not just creativity. It really is a methodology that can be trained, can be learned, and can really be implemented. So let's get deep into the GAITS. Now, GAITS stands for Guidance and Impact Tracking System. Here you can see it's a cycle, and it's a web-based project management tool, but more importantly than a web page, it's a methodology, as I just mentioned before, and a way of thinking how innovation is defined in healthcare. You will see now that it's built around 10 maturity stages, 4 critical domains, and it works across 5 solution types. And it really helps you to track the projects, but also to de-risk your project, to do it more efficiently. So here, no, you can see that the GAITS, it's a wheel, no. The first thing it's makes it quite different from the rest of the methodology, no, that normally are shown as a straight path from the left to the right, no. When you go from the different stage in order, you start and then you arrive at the end and you are done. But GAITS, they reject the model because this is not how really healthcare innovation works, no. The shape of a cycle has to very important messages. The first thing is that healthcare innovation is a process of trial and error, and you will go back. And you will go back to early stages as new evidence comes to the light, as a medical situation changes, or a decision maybe by people in the church of the project changes the rule of your path. No? So that this doesn't mean that your project is failing, but it's how the process works. No? It's an iterative project that really allows going back. The second message of being a cycle is that it's designed to be able to change the direction. If your technology doesn't work as expected, if a clinical need turns out to be different from what you thought it would be, or if a market doesn't exist the way you imagine, GAITS can help you with that. So here are the 10 stages that are part of the methodology. I don't want to go deep into the 10 stages. Here you can see them and you can write them, but normally you can see that the project starts with a need, that it's something that is very obvious, but it needs to really be validated with all the different stakeholders. Then you come with the idea. The important thing, it's not the idea itself, but it's how well it fits. Does it really work as part of the real clinical workflow? Do you have clinicians that they really have told you they could use it, etc. Then we move into the proof of concept stage, where it's where engineers we normally feel more comfortable, where we start defining the solution, generating some prototypes, some mock-ups, and you change that the main parts work and start testing the idea if it's worth it. Then we move to the proof of feasibility. Here, the technology is a little bit more mature. You can demonstrate that the whole solutions work, but not just some of it, not just the main components, but the system as a whole. And you will receive early feedback from potential buyers. This is one of the most important things. Then we move to the proof of value, And here you need to demonstrate over more than 100 medical experts, leading specialists, testings with animals or with people, and business plans that are ready to attract investors. This is often where scientists-led projects, they really run into the problems, because the science is solid, but there just aren't enough funds or regulations to support them. Then we move to the clinical phase. We start with initial clinical trials, means regulated prototypes, real data collection, and first institutional investment. Most of the teams, the point of which they really think they have finished, it's called approval and launch, but it isn't. There is a final stage of the project, which is the clinical use. That means that the hospitals are using the clinical settings, the patients are using, and you're making money of it. And this is where the GAITS was designed to to really bring an idea into a clinical use, not just into something that can be sold. And here are the 4 domains. We just went through the different stages. I also mentioned that there are 4 domains. And here you can see them. The clinical, making sure the innovation is useful and works in the real practice. Also, how you make a business successful in market and business. Then you go through regulation, finding the right path to approval. For some people, the regulation is very complex, and it is, but I mean, there's a lot of strategy behind regulation, and I think that's very interesting. And also, of course, the technology domain, creating and checking the solution itself. So the most important thing to understand about GAITS is that these 4 things must happen at the same time, not in order, not in parallel. That is where most projects go wrong, and we'll talk about this in a few slides. So, if we enter into the topic of orphan devices, one of the best things about GAITS is that it works in all 5 main areas of healthcare, medical technology, digital medicine, in vitro diagnostics, biomarker, and therapeutics. Most frameworks are normally designed just for one type, but GAITS was designed in a different way, and in their website and in the publications you can find specific definitions of the different stages adapted to the different kind of technologies. And the 4 domains and the 10 stages are universal. The weight of each domain depends on what you're building. If you're developing an IVD, the regulatory and clinical evidence has different requirements than if you're building a digital medicine, and GAITS can do this without losing its structure. So now, why does all this matter, even more in orphan devices? So let's start with the most fundamental challenge: small patients populations. We will find ethical constraints. We will find limited samples, underpowered trial designs, but you cannot improvise your clinical strategy at stage 6. No, you really need to start defining all this strategy before. And this is why GAITS really force you to think about all these kind of things, even in the idea stages. Europe now has dedicated pathways for orphan devices. No, we know the medical device group, no, with the EMA expert panels, the accelerator on conformity assessment. These are real incentives, especially designed for orphan devices, but they require a deliberate strategy from very early stages. And a team that reaches, for example, stage 5 without a regulatory plan that has already missed the window benefits from them. So this is also another reason why in orphan devices, the GAITS methodology really brings value to understand when you can really benefit from these incentives. Also, the market of orphan devices is different from the mainstream medical technology in the market. If you sell a small number of products, you may find it hard to make it up for the cost of meeting the MDR. This is something that has been proven before. If your business model is based on traditional ideas, it will not work. And GAITS makes this stage a stage 3 question, not a stage 7 when you are arriving into the market. And then there is this, no, in the case of rare diseases, if a project fails at stage 7 because of regulatory gap that was visible at stage 3, it's not just commercial loss, it's years of hope deferred for patients and families who had no other option. Not following the correct method can be very, very expensive. And if we go to the last, no, this is why we say that GAITS, it's more than just making new devices for orphan. It really protects patients by making sure that the whole progress is made in all the 4 areas at every stage. No, it finds problems before they become really serious and before they reach patients who really need solutions at most. So yeah, I hope you learned something from the GAITS methodology. No, we have a cycle. It's not a linear evolution of events. We have different fields, no, and we have different adapted it to different kind of technologies. We go now to Anneliene to continue with the presentation, and we can go into the questions if you have any at the end of our presentations. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Sofia. Happy to take over and walk you through what is possible to do with the GAITS framework. Let me, for that purpose, put my slides in presenter mode. So where Sofia just ended, I'm happy to take over. So the GAITS framework is a fantastic framework to really plan out your pediatric and rare diseases device development or orphan device development. Having said that, there are some additional challenges that Sofia just pointed out. Those challenges are in terms of the population, the fact that we work with a very small heterogeneous population, the fact that sometimes in clinical evidence gathering, we are in different kinds of trials, small trials, using Bayesian designs, relying on real-world evidence, having ethical constraints, but also the fact that we have a different design and usability for the purposes of the devices that we work with. So for instance, sometimes adaptation to growth with the fact that children grow, we need different devices, or the miniaturization really working in a super small scale. Also, the users are different in our population. So we work with children, with parents, with caregivers, but also in that aspect, psychological factors matter. A couple of other challenges or differences in the population that we're working with is indeed the low volume of devices that we're developing. The fact that we work in a maybe more economically fragile environment, and the fact that we have to work with really a large stakeholder ecosystem, bringing them all together in order to succeed. And that puts pressure on using the GAITS framework as a tool to truly try and bring everything together. So the question is also, if we want to use the GAITS framework, what other tools and devices are there, or tools and initiatives and platforms are there to help us plan throughout the development? And for that, we've really asked in the project we're running is, if we're using the GAITS framework, what are the tools and incentives out there that we can help in the support of the planning of pediatric and orphan device development? And can we actually put them on the GAITS framework so that we know we can use the GAITS framework as a backup end for planning the device development, but really making use of all the initiatives and platforms and tools out there. Because we would need, if you're developing a pediatric and orphan device, throughout the development, you need pretty much all the help you can get. So the question is really, how do all these initiatives and platforms and tools come in? So in order to do this, we've really tried to bring together a number of sources from the European Committee, and the entire community came together and helped us try and bring all the different tools, incentives, and platforms together. So we've had an open survey, we've consulted the different European reference networks, we've done a number of surveys in hospitals and healthcare providers, and we've done surveys in patient representatives. And each one of them asked them, what are the tools that you're using? What are the platforms you're using? What are the initiatives that you're using? And having said that, we tried to bring them together and then, based on the GAITS framework, thought, when do you actually need to use them? How should you use them? What should be going first? What should be going second? And we've had an overwhelming response from the community. We've had over 200 different initiatives, tools, and supports that are out there, and that all together cover quite, as you can see on the slide, quite a lot of different topics out there. So anything from funding, from infrastructure, from development practices, from regulatory, from patient support. And the question really was, if we're using the GAITS framework, how do we use them best? And how can we, on that GAITS framework, really work with the different tools and incentives? So while the GAITS framework is, as Sofia nicely showed, a circle, for the purpose of this presentation, we've mapped it out into a line because that's slightly easier to show. And I'm really trying to go to the four different domains: technology, clinical, regulatory, and marketing and business. And the first one being technology. And we've really seen that even in the technological development, where we see a lot of developers having their start, we see already the needs to involve different stakeholders, such as patient organizations, but also do a horizon scanning quite early on in the process. We see the importance of the role of funding and to plan for funding throughout the programs, different programs out there. We see the importance of the role of registries in early development, but also in the later phases of development to implement new devices. And we see the different infrastructures that are out there, whether it comes to digital, physical, or AI infrastructures that can be used throughout the development, and the information that is out there. In terms of regulatory support, there is the second domain of the GAITS framework is regulatory, and we've seen a growing amount of regulatory possibilities that can provide assistance. So we have, of course, the new guidances that are out there, the MDCG guidance, for instance, but also of course, the EU medical device regulation, but also the different tools out there that can help with making progress on regulatory proceedings. So the different guidances, the different templates, the different panels that are out there that can help your development. The marketing as the third domain of the GAITS framework is often one that quite some developers sometimes put a little bit off, but we've seen really using that frameworks that it's quite important early on, and that's also what this image shows you. Quite early on, think about how do I set out this device development in terms of marketing. So how do I start early on with my branding, with my patient value profile, to really have a clear image in mind, what the needs are, how am I addressing them, and are these needs that are shared? But also the work of working on marketing together with, for instance, tech transfer offices and patient organizations to really spread out the idea of the tool that you're developing. And the importance of this image is really that most of these marketing support steps are actually quite early on already in the process of developing an orphan or pediatric device. And here are, of course, also the steps in terms of reimbursement. So steps towards HTA reimbursement and business plan that quite early on makes it important to focus on this. And then I think the fourth, but maybe most important domain is the clinical development. And there we really see the entire European community having to come together with developing a device further on. So the patient organization, of course, the clinical research networks, the different toolbox and initiatives that are out there, but also to see how can we actually make use of the different clinical networks that are out there, depending on the kind of device that you're working with, that altogether can provide information about the clinical needs and clinical values that your product should have. So this was quite a theoretical question, but really the idea has been that we have many different supports and ideas out there throughout Europe that we can actually rely on development on using this GAITS framework. But maybe to close off, we do have a number of tips and tricks to remember while you're planning your development. And I think the first one has truly been using the framework and the different incentives that are out there is to understand and track your development maturity. Using the GAITS framework, but also using initiatives like the TRL framework, the question is, do we know the current status of the product development? And aren't we sort of over or underestimating certain aspects? So to regularly test that and make sure that they're aligned and that the four domains actually come together. A second one has truly been to start with a clear intended purpose statement. We've seen quite in all three projects, the Orphan Dev for Kids, i4Kids for Rare, and DeCODe have all seen quite a number of pediatric and orphan device developers that don't have their intended purpose statement quite clear. And that's really needs to be the starting point with a clear clinical need, clear target population, and a clear context of use that starts off your development. Then, in terms of development, I think the third tip or trick is to design your trajectory with clinical evidence in mind. Plan a feasibility study design really well. Think about your data needs quite early on. The fourth overall tip or trick is to build a multidisciplinary team quite early on. Is really bring all these different peoples together from patients to clinical experts to technological experts, regulatory experts, and reimbursement experts and marketing experts to truly make them all come together. Plan for sustainability from the onset on sort of follows from that aspect to truly quite early think about how do I get it into the market and not only start thinking about that whenever a regulatory approval comes along. Same is true to anticipate regulatory and HTA requirements already from the very early phases before even starting the clinical development. Map and leverage available support is probably my biggest tip or trick throughout this procedure. There are many different tools, incentives, and ideas out there that can help, and make sure that you absolutely base yourself upon those and bring them together. And then also address reimbursement early on by aligning and engaging with payers and aligning clinical outcomes with the adoption value criteria from the start. The last two are basically also having to do with the changing landscape. So the first one has been, the ninth one has been about to stay informed about new mechanisms and new platforms out there. It's quite a developing landscape with new guidances and new ideas coming about, and make sure that you stay on top of those. And then I think to finish up, to maybe embrace technological and pathway diversity and to adapt throughout the development of your pathway, given the fact that it's a heterogeneous population that we're working with, and we have to be somewhat flexible throughout the development. Having said that, I think now is a beautiful moment to pass the torch to not only the theory behind planning, but most importantly, what actually the reality looks like. And for that, we've invited an actual pediatric and orphan device developer, Giacomo, that runs a company and is currently developing a product. And he will tell us about the different steps that he's taken to bring his product slowly but steadily towards the market. And with that, I'm happily giving the torch to Giacomo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Anneliene, for this nice introduction. Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. As Anneliene just said, uh, from theory to practice, it, it's very different, and that's why I've called my presentation "How to Shoot Yourself in the Foot." This is why when you are a biologist like me and you want to try to innovate your market or your product. You have plenty of stuff in mind. You think you're going to revolutionize your market, and then you crash with the reality that many things are very hard. And in my presentation, I'm trying to let you know very quickly how we as a company we get through all the trouble. So this will be a trouble presentation, not a troubleshooting presentation, just a trouble presentation in which you can understand how the theory is very different from the practice. So I've been asked to introduce myself, and that's me back in 86, December 86. And uh, I was born in Parma, in Italy. Parma is a very small city between Bologna and Milan. It's very nice, but mostly is known for its magnificent ham and cheese, the Parmesan cheese and the Parmesan ham. I'm really glad that no one can interrupt me in my presentation because I'm glad to see that they are two best product in the world. Fast forward 30 years, 2016, I started my PhD in the beautiful city of Verona, Verona, the classical city for Romeo and Juliet. And during my PhD, my mentor was Professor Luciani, that actually is the director of the hospital of the cardiac surgery. But at the time, he was the director of the pediatric cardiac surgery. And so all my PhD was mainly to analyze the heart of children patients affected with congenital heart diseases. And the idea behind the project was to record the beating heart with this high-speed camera that was attached to an extensible R. The camera was placed more or less at 30 centimeters from the heart, and we were able to record the cardiac movement in 2 dimensions and to extrapolate some parameters of motility, of cardiac motility, like speed, acceleration, and so on. And we were also able to make small correlation from the cardiac movement to the outcome of the patients in children patients. We performed several, we published several studies about it. But at the same time, in 2016, after I talked with my professors and asked them to try to put this technology on the ground, they told me that they were not interested in create a spin-off, a university spin-off, and so they just give me free way to try working with my feet. And so I get these two very big friends, an engineer, the green guy, and a businessman, the blue guy, and then it's me. It's a sort of joke, no? A biologist, an engineer, and a businessman enters in a room, and of course it cannot end well. So we just uh, love to play, to be. Sorry, we just love to thinking to be entrepreneurs. But at the time, it was very, very hard because we didn't have any idea on how to create an enterprise, especially a medtech enterprise specialized on pediatric cardiac surgery. So during the years, we starting to present a little bit our idea, and we were able to win some money through startup competition. And in 2021, we just created our company. We just incorporated our company, Gemtech SRL, and we start to grow also with people. And actually, we are 13 people working at this project. And as you can see, now we have a kind of really device. It's not the the wooden one that I just showed before. So now, how did we set up the team? So at the very beginning, we just set up the team with these three verticals. And one vertical was the clinic one, with me and my colleague that we have both performed the same PhD in the University of Verona. And then there was the business one with Enrico, that is a businessman, and another guy with a degree in economy of the digital technologies. And then we have the technical or software aspects of the company. So with software developer, mathematicians, and so on. And if you have listened to the past two presentations from Sofia and Anneliene, you just can see that something is missing. We are working on three pillars while they were talking since now about four pillars. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes what I'm talking about. So we started from the clinic. Okay, so we want to validate our technology, and so thanks to Heinrich Mackler in Graz, Austria, we were able to test our device the first time on a swine model, and to perform some experiments that leads to a publication in 2025 in which we demonstrated the safety and efficacy of our device, that is in which we have correlated our device with a gold standard, and then we ask 5 expert clinicians to also provide their hints about the beating heart, and also we correlated their analysis. And from this study, we showed that we were able to analyze the heart two times better than the clinicians. And this is not why this is not because the clinicians are bad, of course, but this is because the eye of the clinicians can just see the macro movements while our machine can see the micro movements. So we were able to follow the one single pixel movement, and of course we were more precise than the clinicians. So we have validated our technology. We were very excited about this study, and then we moved to the second pillar, that is the business pillar. During the year, and it took like a couple of years at least to create both the all the value proposition. So we have divided value proposition for all the stakeholders, the market analysis, the competitive landscape. So who are our competitor and why we are better than them? What is our unique selling proposition, the business model, the revenue model, the sales plan, and marketing activities. Everything of this stuff is included in our pitch deck for investors, and we were able to create document very interesting to be presented to some investors. Getting to the third pillar, the technical aspect, we have created the device. This device is able to bring a 3D camera above the open chest during the surgery, so that we will be able to record the heart as you had previously saw on a swine model. And we worked a lot to obtain the patent. So we obtained the Italian patent. We have just the European patent has just been accepted like 1 month ago, and also we have extended our patent to G7 countries, so Canada, US, Europe, and Japan. And also this took a lot of time. So at that very moment, we went to the VC thinking we are finally ready. We are ready to raise money to put this device on the ground. The first question was, what about regulatory path? And this is our reaction. We didn't know really how we're talking about. We were thinking that for the regulatory path, you just need to pay. You just pay for the certification and you obtain the certification, because no one ever told us that there was a regulatory path, and this was very hard for us. So as they said before, as Anneliene and Sofia said before, we have to start from scratch. So we trying to understand what the regulatory path was for medical device, and also we were in that period between 2022 and 23, in which the path for medical device were changing. Was changing, so from the old regulatory to the new MDR, and everything was not clear. Also, the experts, the regulatory experts, were not that informed about the new MDR and how to manage the new MDR because everything changes. The And so we were kind of very confused about it because for the regulatory path you don't have like you have to do this, this, and this, and so I mean, point A it costs X, point B it costs X, and point C it costs X. No, it's not like this. It's very weird to understand how the regulatory path works. Uh, and so in this case, fortunately, finding and asking for direction and for help, we encountered EPTRI, that is a European Pediatric Translational Research Infrastructure that helps companies to develop their path, mainly through clinical stage and regulatory path. And thanks to them, we were invited to join Orphan for Kids project. And at the very end, they won, EPTRI won this European project, and we get finally in touch with a great group also of clinicians, like for example the group in Warsaw, the Children Memorial Hospital of Warsaw, in which they perform only clinics on pediatric cohorts. And uh, together, we started to put on the ground everything that should be used in the future to create the regulatory path, such as, as Anneliene was saying before, a clear set of patients, a clear set of outcome, a clear set of expectation, and so on. And so, thanks to them, we were able to enter operating room, pediatric operating room, and we were able to perform the first pilot study in 2 children patients affected by pathology of Fallot, and to create the clinical investigation plan. That is one of the thousands of documents that you need to start your regulatory path. And so thanks to them, and also thanks to Orphan for Kids, we are starting to know and to realize how the regulatory path works, and how it takes, how long it takes, also in years and in efforts from clinical part and from company part. And it's just not like something that you can check. It's something that you should have in mind at the very beginning of your journey that we hadn't, and so we struggle a lot from under these aspects. And so I just want to conclude with my take-home message that everything is way more complicated than you can ever imagine. I mean, creating an enterprise, there's a reason if it's called enterprise, because it's like shooting with a sniper rifle in the dark and trying to get your target at 1 mile away. It's very impossible. It's very, very complicated. You have to think you have to manage thousands of things every day. And so my hints for the day, my take home message is that you really need partners or framework, like for example, in this case, GAITS, that I didn't know when I started my journey, but actually I'm very glad to have the opportunity to talk also with them, because these kinds of partner and frameworks will really give you a path to help you to create your healthcare company, and also to do it in very short amount of time. Because for a startup and for a company that is very newborn, time is the most valuable aspects that you have because resources are very, very limited, but the only resources that you have is time. And so you really don't have to waste time. We did it because, of course, we didn't know how to do it. But I hope that eventually this presentation can give you an idea on how hard is the stuff and that you really need to ask for help in the most way possible. Don't be shy to ask for help to groups like Eptri or GAITS because it's really really worth it. Thank you for your time.
So first of all, thank you to all of the presenters for today. This was a really nice and exciting start. And I think we have the first question ready, waiting for the next ones to come in. And that's a question that asks, what incentives would you suggest to make an orphan or pediatric device project successful? So in other words, what's the most important incentive or tip or trick? So maybe to ask that question both to Giacomo and to Sofia, and also give it a try to answer. But maybe Sofia first, what for you is the most important incentive for tip or trick?
Yeah, I was looking for the microphone button. So probably to try to follow the orphan device designation, no? It's something you need to find the right moment to start the process for that, because it is expensive and you need to have quality data. However, it really provides you very interesting incentives. For example, they extend the protection of your IP for more years, which gives you more a more competitive advantage, and also it's a very interesting incentive for the investors. Now, if you are able to show results and to demonstrate that you're in the process of getting an orphan device designation, it really adds value because reduced costs on the clinical studies. It also provides this specific group in the EMA, that they really help you to design the clinical studies, but also the extension of the IP protection is very relevant. That was one. Thank you, Anneliene.
Thank you. So Giacomo, what for you is the most important incentive for tool out there to make your project successful?
Yeah, I think that medical device companies are for the majority created by very scientific aspects like PhD or something, or big research group. So I think that the first thing that you have to do is to create very big networks of key opinion leader in your sectors. And that's why, because I would like to anticipate the reply for the second question that ask that if easier to create a product for rare disease in the market. No, it's not. It's definitely not, because the venture capitalist, the people that provides you, that gives you money, they want a lot of money in return. And orphan device markets are usually small, are usually niche markets, and it's very hard to find investors that are going to put a lot of money, because you need a lot of money to develop your orphan device. Our trick was that since our devices it is able to follow the cardiac movement, we were also able to move to the adult groups. And so when we talk to venture capital or investors, we talk about adult cohorts that are a very big market, and there are very big returns of investments, and they really love it. But we never mention the pediatric cohort and the pediatric market. Sometimes they also ask us why we started our studies from the pediatric group and not from adult group, and I have to climb on glasses to explain to explain why. But one of my explanation is the answer to the first question, because we had a great network of key opinion leaders that were pediatric. So if you have big networks, you can also manage to submit some European project that provides a lot of money, but you really need to have a very, very big consortium. And so my hint is to start create a network for your yeah, for what you're doing, for what you're developing.
Thank you. Maybe I will also add my 2 cents here, and that is for me the really incentive has always been to look 2 steps ahead, because what I've seen most of the time is that, and the framework made that quite clear with helping to guide different device developers, is that most of the people are really busy and focused in the step that they're at rather than looking 2 steps ahead. So maybe that for me is as simple as the trick as it can possibly be, is to look 2 steps ahead and see what is coming in the next phase. We have a second question, and that is, do you think it's easier for product for rare diseases to get into the market in the EU or the US? I think Giacomo has already taken a little bit of a leapway into this one and said, no, it's not. And what do we think what should be done for the EU to become a more attractive market? I will give the word in a second to Sofia, but for me, one of the things that I'd love to see is, first of all, dedicated funding for orphan device developers to come here, and that's slowly coming around. But most importantly, I also do hope that there are increasingly becoming incentives like we've seen in different, for instance, in the drug market, but also in the US markets, incentives that truly help stimulate orphan pediatric device development. But that's my judgment, maybe giving it also to Sofia.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a very interesting question. We know that the FDA has these pediatric vouchers, no, but they are meant to be for drugs, no, and I didn't know about these vouchers until last year, no, and I don't know if you know about them, no, but if you bring to the market a drug for orphan diseases in the US, they give you this, what they call a priority review vouchers that you can sell to a company. And with that, you can invest into a new development. So it's a way, it's a financial incentive, let's say, but really helps you, to make sure that you are going to be able to start another project. This in the FDA, this is only done in drugs, not in medical devices. So I think that's something where we can learn from the FDA. What we could copy from the US and bring into Europe, I think are the pediatric device consortia, for example. No, the 3 projects organizing this webinar. No, we have been lucky to benefit from the European Commission grant. To try to see how this could be implemented here in Europe, but in the US, the resources that they have are much important, let's say, and they really give you tools to support companies and projects developing solutions in pediatrics and specifically in orphan devices.
Thank you. I've also gotten a question via email that I think is directed to Giacomo, and that is, if you were starting a new device development program today, what would you do differently in the first 12 to 24 months compared to how you planned your current or previous development?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to reply to this question, because actually I know what I need, but the fact is that when you start a company and you are like a small group of people, like we were, like 3, 4, 5, you have to do plenty of things. From the very small one, like bureaucracy, the daily bureaucracy, to managing the patent, to managing the clinical study, and so on. So I would say that definitely the things that I would change probably would be my approach to the networks, because what we have done so far uh, is to be super focused on the product because we are scientists. So we think that clinical validation is everything because I am a biologist. I did 15 years of cardiac research. And so to me, the clinical validation is everything. If you have clinical validation, you can sell it. That's not the way. That's really not the way. You have to create your network. You have to meet a lot of people. You have to talk with a lot of people because money is what you need, and money doesn't look at clinical validation. And that's really sad, but it's really true. Money wants return on investment is in the last years possible. And so you have to start doing your business work very, very soon. So the very 2 years we just were closed in our garage and ameliorating our software, our hardware, our clinical validation. And then starting from the 4th years of the company, and the startup is 5 years. So starting from the 4th years, we start talking with venture capital, investors, and so on. In that case, was a mess because we noticed that we have to totally change our way of thinking. So for the first 4 years, we just thought in a way that was wrong because we were following our idea of what the market is, but we were not following what the market really is. And that's really a difference. And if you understand this, and if you understand this at the very beginning, you can really, really, really save a lot of times.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a last question, and that is maybe the fact that rather than focusing on what sets the US market from the EU market apart, the question is, could we come to a joint approach? So I'm also happily asking this question to all of us today to say, what makes for you that we can work towards a more global approach? Let's just, rather than focusing on two specific markets, what would we need towards a more global approach to orphan device development or pediatric and orphan device development across the world? What in magical buttons style, what would be a trick to help make this happen? And maybe Sofia first.
That's a difficult. I was reading to the Q&A because we do have suggestions instead of questions, so that was very interesting. No, I agree. No, that we need to go for a joint market on rare diseases and combined approach. That's something very ambitious because it implies the regulatory agencies, which is something it's not easy, to be able to define the new regulations. But I agree. I don't know, Anneliene. You brought me with a very interesting question. Not sure, maybe you can start, or Giacomo, and I can follow and I could get inspired by you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sofia. I would say yes, things that I've learned when I was in Atlanta. At the Georgia Tech University, we were invited for a startup competition, thanks also to the to the Orphan Dev for Kids network. And in that occasion, I met an investor. Uh, I think that my heart was totally captured by him because he was yelling from the stage that the venture capital and also the investors in the world should stop to looking for 10x, 20x, 100x of return of investment. Otherwise, only the kind of Facebook, Meta, Instagram, and stuff provides you those kinds of returns. And it's not the case of the healthcare. I mean, the healthcare is very, it can provide you very big revenues because medical device costs a lot and the market is very big, but you can't expect an exit 10x, 20x, or 30x from the very beginning because you need a lot of money to start it. So if you want a 30x exit from a medical company, that medical company should be valued like 300, 400, 500 million euros or dollars. And it's not the case because also the biggest company, like for example, Medtronic, that is the biggest one, their revenue, the total revenue are 11 billion. So it's not that big. You can't reach the valuation of a deep tech like OpenAI or something like that. And this investor was yelling and arguing with everyone because he was sure that this would be the magical trick to start again with the investments in healthcare in general. Because when I was in Atlanta, it was 2024, right after Trump, and they were already showing their data, so the US data about the struggle of the healthcare investment. And they were saying that they were in the lowest peak in a couple of decades of healthcare investment. And that's why the investors were really, really hard on that. And he was very angry. But my heart was really catched by this stuff because it's a total new vision, okay, of the healthcare of the healthcare problem.
Okay, I will also give this a try and then we slowly get towards the end. But for me, my hope is eventually to build a sort of pipeline that comes from an early structured dialogue, what truly the unmet needs of rare diseases are and pediatrics are, and then actually fostering them up all the way. So spanning the full development spectra from development to access and actually making sure that you have a structure in which you bring in already all the experts, but really guide up an idea. And that's my hope that eventually will come to line and that also then connects the different continents. Because if we're working on diseases that might affect 40, 50 people in the EU and maybe 80 people in the United States or the opposite way, if we can guide these ideas up, we lose a lot less focus. Any last words, Sofia, on that? Or
Yeah, with what you were just saying, and also Giacomo, what he was saying about the investors, I think it's good to see, that in the last years there are new investors with profiles more interested in pediatrics. In our case, in i4Kids, we have been supporting the creation of a specific venture VC in pediatrics and orphan diseases, and it's Montana Impact Fund, which is managed by here in Spain, and they are about to start investing in the first companies. So I think that if you look back, to which was the situation maybe in 2021 when i4Kids started, we kind of have the feeling that things might be improving, at least because there is more conscious, and people are starting to understand that rare in our case, pediatric innovation, it's a challenge, but it's a real opportunity. There are many things to improve, and as we always say, children are the 25% of the population, but 100% of the future. So the investment is worth. I totally agree with what you were saying, Giacomo, about the return of the investment. We cannot expect the same returns as big pharma. Also, not just other fields, but also the pharma medical devices are more complex and more costly. But there are many things that can be improved. We just need to make sure that all the stakeholders are supporting or share the same vision. Yeah.
I think with this beautiful statement, it's 6 o'clock, and with that, we're ending this webinar. This webinar was a combined series of 3 EU for Health co-funded projects, i4Kids for Rare, OrphaDev for Kids, and the DeCODe project. Next week, we'll be back with then planning a webinar based on regulatory approval and regulatory development. And I'm hoping to see all of you back today with then 3 new speakers from the 3 different projects. And having said that, feel free to send in any questions you still might have, and we're happy to answer that. And with that, I wish you a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.